Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave Corporate Productions with my co-host Stacie here to talk about Extended Family Season 1, Episode 6, The Consequences of Status. The episode's description reads as follows. When Trey's high profile gets Jim out of a speeding ticket, I don't know what that means, Julia and Jim worry about the message it sends to their children. The episode is written by Mike O'Malley, who's the series creator, and directed by James Widows, who has done every episode except for one episode in this season. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a sport-free podcast. If you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms of this podcast now video one, please subscribe. You can also head over to my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to our channel. All right, so I actually have a few shout-outs this week.
Okay.
Which is something unusual for this series so far. One is for Barbara, who thinks this series is pretty neat and nifty. She did think we were being a little too hard on the last episode.
I saw that, and I thought that was funny because...
I don't know if she was directly talking to us or if she's talking about the general comments. Yeah.
Right. I feel like we've been nicer to this series than anybody I've seen on the whole internet.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. We have been a consistent defender of this series. Now, like I said to her, we criticize and point out the inconsistencies and the silly things about any series that we talk about out of love. It's it's what we like doing. It's how we like talking about series. And like I said, we are way more of a defender of this series than anybody else is. That's for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like we've constantly been telling people to give this show a chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we agree with you. Give the show a chance.
The other shout out is for Leslie. She commented on the Facebook pages. She likes both the series and our podcast so far. So welcome to the channel.
Thank you.
Welcome to the channel to Barbara as well. So, Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode?
Okay, so Grandpa Bobby's back.
Yes.
I really like him.
Yep.
I really like him.
It's been a couple episodes.
I feel like he adds something.
He does.
So I hope that he continues to be in more episodes than he's not in. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And if we do get a season 2, which, I mean, I don't know. But if we did, it'd be great to have him be a regular cast member and be in every episode.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I really think that character adds something to this dynamic.
Yeah.
So, Trey's the ass this week.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I was kind of defending him. I was like, he's right. He didn't try to get out of the ticket.
It's funny because when Jim originally brought up his point, I was not sure which side it was on.
Yeah.
You raised the issue. I'm like, okay, Jim might be overreacting here,
right.
But he might be right.
At first, I was kind of defending Trey, but as soon as Jim asked for the ticket and we saw how the kids were responding, Trey ate it up.
Yeah.
And from then on, until the moment Trey realized he was wrong, he was acting super ridiculous. So... we've had episodes where we can see Julia is insane. We've had episodes where we see Jim is insane. This was Trey's moment.
Mm-hmm.
Trey is wrong here. He was being ridiculous. And speaking of which, last week, which one was that? The consequences of matchmaking. I had put up 2 polls on Twitter.
Okay.
Regarding that, and I didn't put this in my notes, so I can see if I can pull this out of my head. One I asked, are you answering the phone for your ex after 10 p.m.?
My answer is... sorry. My answer is no.
100% of the votes went to no.
How many people voted?
Not a lot. A handful.
Okay.
A handful. I don't have the exact numbers, but it was more than 1 or 2. But
well, I would say that if the mother of my child is calling me at 10 p.m., I'm a little nervous as to exactly what that's about.
Right, because you don't communicate as frequently. You probably would answer it because you think it's an emergency.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's, he's calling her every night to talk about random shit.
Right.
And the other one I asked was, who is crazier in this episode, Jim or Julia? And 100% of those votes went to Julia.
Okay.
So this week...
I agree.
This week, it's Trey. Trey is the one being ridiculous in this episode.
Okay. Yep. So, yeah. Did you like the episode?
I did. I think that... it helped really it really gave us more perspective on Trey.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It really saw
this was Trey's episode.
The disparity between lifestyles in a way that we didn't really comprehend before.
Right. Yep.
Where I think most of the population can be like, oh, yeah, right. that's a thing.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I thought this was a good episode. I thought it was a good showcase for Donald Faison as Trey in this episode. I've been looking for this. He's mainly been a background character. I mean, he's been involved, but this is the first episode that really focuses on his character.
Right.
But so I've been looking forward to that. I thought it was a really cute episode with some really good points to make. Do we have anything else to say before getting into this thing?
No, let's just do it.
All right. The episode begins with the kids, Trey and Jim, coming back from a concert. You know, it's really interesting that Trey and Jim are doing this without Julia.
Right.
Yeah.
So the guys took the kids to the concert. They're doing car karaoke.
Right.
And they're singing the song Don't Start Now by Dua Lipa. That's who they went to see.
Okay. You know, I consistently like Trey and Jim's relationship in this series.
They seem to have a great bond.
Which is highly unusual for any kind of media.
Yeah.
Usually if you have the ex and, the current lover, that's usually a situation that's, where both of them are sniping at each other.
Right.
And these two have conflict, but they also have a really good bond together.
And, the way that Jim and Julia are trying to raise their kids, it would have been a lot harder if Jim and Trey didn't get along with each other. So
Absolutely.
I think it's great that they're working so hard to form a relationship. And I haven't watched the next episode, but just based on the description, it sounds
seems to be
like
another Trey Jim
they're
episode.
going to have, more great interactions with each other next episode.
So they end up getting pulled over for speeding by a cop played by Neil McDonough. He has 135 acting credits for him, including a villain in the series Justified, an ill-fated crewman in the second TNG film First Contact, and an appearance in Quantum Leap Season 4 Play Ball.
Oh, really?
He was he was the baseball player that Sam was there to help. He was kind of a jackass in that episode.
Like the younger guy?
Yeah.
That had a son or something?
Well, no, he was the son of someone who basically abandoned him.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
It was his... Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was much younger back then.
Yeah, I would
We
not
all
have
were
recognized...
much younger
I would
back
not
then.
have recognized him for sure. I'll have to
Nope.
take another peek at that.
It's funny because I wasn't able to initially find proof that this was Neil McDonough because I didn't see the pictures. Apparently they were there, but I just totally missed them. But in the screener access, you get pictures and there's captions, and that's where you're able to see who the actor is because that information is going to be nowhere else. But yeah, eventually I was able to see the picture and prove that this was actually who I thought he was.
Yeah, I was able to get the names of all of our supporting cast this week, which feels like an accomplishment when we're trying to dig it out from our screeners.
So he's probably about to give him a ticket, but then he recognizes Trey as the owner of the Celtics. They go back and forth. He ends up getting a basketball signed, and he lets Jim off the hook for the ticket, mistaking Jim as his driver, which is something that kind of annoys Jim a little bit.
Yeah. And Jim's trying during this conversation. He switches sports. So they're talking basketball. He switches sports, starts talking about the Patriots.
Yeah.
And it ends up with Jim lying and saying that he named his son after Bill Belichick.
Right.
And it's funny because Jimmy's trying to object. He's like, my name's not. And he's like, shut up, Billy.
Yeah, in any situation, kids are really quick to sell you out.
Right? But it's always that they're quick to tell the truth.
Yeah.
In this type of situation. You know?
Yeah.
They're quick to be like, no, that's not right. I want to tell you the right thing. So
right, yeah.
It's funny because the whole point of this is not to corrupt the kids, but you're the one, like, making the kid lie.
Right, yeah. So despite Jim getting increasingly uncomfortable and wanting the ticket, he gets let off. The kids are impressed, and that kicks off our plot line.
Yeah, and I think it was the way the kids were reacting. Like, oh, wow, Trey's just superstar. He's saving you from going to jail.
Right.
And I think that's why Jim really quickly picked up on the impression the kids were getting for this, and that's why he asked for the ticket. Jim was happy to try and talk his way out of the ticket.
But he almost talked himself into it.
He was happy to try talking himself out of it until he saw how the kids were responding.
Right.
And that's when he was like, oh, this is a bad example for my kids. Officer, I want the ticket. And he was like, I'm not going to give you the ticket.
Right. So they go back to the nest and talk about the concert. The kids are excited. Jim looks upset, which Julia picks up on. Trey ends up taking the kids to the kitchen on his back, and they're chanting his name the entire way.
Yeah, and they start doing ridiculous things like, oh, can we rob a bank?
Right.
And this is where Trey started eating it up.
Right, absolutely.
He should have picked up on what Jim was doing. And he should have been like, now, kids, it's good. Okay. I don't know how to say it. Like, it's good to talk yourself out of a ticket because we don't want a ticket.
Right.
But also, like, no, I'm not going to go rob a bank because I'm famous.
Right. Well,
There's a line here that he should have...
I don't think the kids actually thought they could go rob a bank.
No, but it's
they're
just
playing
the fact.
around,
It's the fact that they're like fascinating this whole topic, you know. And he should have brought it down to earth.
Right.
He should have picked up on what was happening, and instead of eating it up and being like, "Yeah, I'm the man," he should have been like, "Okay, well, you know, don't break the law."
Right. Yeah. Be good kids. Don't do drugs. Anyway, Jim reveals the nature of his issue, that the kids are going to think that they can get away with things, but in reality, they don't live in Trey's world and will not get the same treatment. Julia thinks he's overreacting, and the kids keep making jokes about crimes that they can get away with, and then Trey departs.
And this is, okay, so during all of this, a funny thing happened. Jimmy comes out, because they went into the kitchen to make ice cream sundaes. Jimmy comes out and says, "We're out of whipped cream." So Trey called up the chef at the Ritz, and he's going to bring us some whipped cream.
Yeah.
And that's hinting at how ridiculous Trey's lifestyle is.
And that only gets worse.
You know, you didn't call for Instacart.
Right.
He called the chef at the Ritz. So he probably just paid $10,000 to have somebody bring over
a bottle of whipped cream.
A bowl of whipped cream.
Right.
From the Ritz-Carlton Hotel.
Hey, but at least there's enough for Jim, as he points out. Okay, so in Trey's apartment the next day, or that night,
yeah.
Julia and Trey are together. Trey is excited to form a relationship with the kids, which is kind of weird because we've already established that relationship as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, but he said we had a good time and everybody bonded and it was great. This is maybe the first time Julia wasn't around.
Right.
For them to hang out together.
He talks about his $3,000 pajamas.
Yeah, so it's they're custom made in Italy, Turkish silk pajamas. They were on back order for a year.
Yeah.
Just like his mattress is in back order for a year. And Julia asks how much the PJs cost, and he starts by saying $3. And I thought this was just really funny. She's like, 300. He goes, 1,000.
Right.
And she's like, 300,000? No, just 3,000. And then it was funny because you can see where Julia is faltering this line, right? Because she's engaged to Trey. She's falling into his lifestyle.
Right.
She didn't used to be in this lifestyle. Between her job, you know, where she's cruising with Pitbull, and being with Trey, she's losing her sense of reality from the world she came from.
Right.
And she's like, well, okay, not 300,000, but 3,000 is still a lot for pajamas, isn't it?
Right.
Like, she's not sure anymore.
Right. But he then makes it worse by spilling some toothpaste on the pajamas.
He gets toothpaste on his pajama pants and takes the pajama pants off, shoves them in the trash can instead of laundering them.
I didn't initially know what that was. I didn't realize that was a trash can.
Oh, yeah, that was a trash can.
And yeah, well, I mean, I knew that after the fact, but like at first I'm thinking, okay, he's putting the laundry in. He's putting his pants in the laundry. But no, then I realized it's a trash can. He's throwing those 3,000.
He threw them away because he got spilled toothpaste on them. And then went and put on his backup pair.
Right.
So he has a backup pair of the $3,000 pajamas. But he said now he needs to order a new backup pair.
Right.
And he's like, I'll just order them for everybody. What's everybody's sizes? And Julia is quick to be like, well, my size is 0. Order me some. But she's like, I don't know if you should buy the kids $3,000 pajamas.
Yeah, you know, that's not a good idea with kids.
She's thinking about Jim's point of view, right? And she's agreeing with it to a point without making the stand and saying, hey, Trey, I agree, you're spoiling the kids.
Well, at this point, I'm thinking she's starting to think that Jim has a point.
Exactly.
And that's why she brings the thing with Jim up in the first place.
But she also, at the same time, doesn't just be like, I agree with Jim.
Right.
She's doing it kind of in a backhanded way, and she's like, well, I don't want them to get used to $3,000 pajamas, and then they have to get used to wearing real-world pajamas. And he's like, why would they ever have to wear real-world pajamas again? They live in my world now.
Right, yeah.
And that's when she's like, oh, there is something happening here.
Right.
And Trey doesn't know. He does not understand.
Right.
That he lives in a different world than the general populace.
Yes. I don't even think Adam, who, you know, he's a pretty well-off guy, at least compared to me. He can't afford to buy $3,000.
Oh, definitely not. This is a different world altogether.
Right.
But it is funny because my husband and I have had similar conversations where I'm like, you're out of touch with,
the common man.
People who haven't had things as easy as you have in your life.
Mm-hmm. So
this is that times 100,000%.
Yeah, absolutely. She brings up the Jim's concern. Trey thinks Jim is overreacting, and he has a good point. It's not like he was like, "Oh, do you know who I am?"
Right.
He didn't say that.
And like I said at the beginning, at first,
right,
just for that first moment, he was. I agree. He wasn't trying to get out of the ticket, but I think it's the way he responded afterwards and was whooping it up with the kids about the fact that he got out of the ticket.
So it basically makes him look like the cool guy, and that's what he's doing here. Is basically like, oh, look at me, I'm cool.
Yeah.
But he wants the kids to think of him that way. But so he doesn't want to talk through people anymore in this family. He wants to talk directly to Jim. About his issues.
Says he needs to talk to Jim, and they need to get on the same page, which is a great idea. You do need to get on the same page.
Jim is at the nest, meanwhile, and we see Jim's father. Jim thinks the kids are getting spoiled being around Trey. His father brings up a banana-seated bicycle that Jim was smug about as a kid. And he believes that the kids are going to be okay, that they're good kids, that they'll take influence from Jim, and he has to trust that. And this ends up making Jim feel better about this situation.
Right. Grandpa Bobby, as usual, is the voice of reason, and is like, you know what, it's just not that serious.
The true voice of reason. Not we initially thought that Trey was the voice of reason, but no, it's Bobby.
Bobby usually has pretty good advice.
Yeah. I mean, aside from the season premiere, which we've brought up a couple of times already, about the goldfish.
Yeah, well.
But other than that, he's been on point. So they're at the basketball game. Jim is prepared to argue with Jim. But
Trey is prepared to argue with Jim.
Did I just say Jim is about to argue with Jim?
That's what I heard.
Okay. All right. So, but Jim has basically reversed his opinion entirely.
Yeah, he's like, you're right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Trey's like, I'm trying to argue with you, man. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Jim ends up apologizing. And he's like, you know what? I thought about it, and you're right. I overreacted. They shake on it. Everybody's happy.
Julia and Jim go off to get some food, and he's approached by Grace, who has some friends along, that want to take a selfie with Trey and possibly go on his private jet.
Yeah, so they're like, oh, Grace told us that you're going to take us on your private jet to Tahiti. Thank you. Which, of course, never happened. That conversation didn't happen.
Right.
But Trey doesn't object to this. He just kind of looks on like, okay. And these kids, I want to bring them up. The characters were Maeve and Siobhan, and they're played by Caden Swan and Camila Rodriguez. Camila Rodriguez, I saw on her IMDb, she actually starred in the movie The Naughty Nine with Lindura.
Oh, well, what do you know?
Yeah, one of our stars of Sullivan's Crossing that we interviewed recently.
Yeah.
It was a Christmas movie that just came out this past year, and Camila Rodriguez, who played Siobhan, had a role in that.
Oh, sweet deal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she's like, I'm not sure if these are going to be the ones I'm going to be friends with going on that trip, but I'll let you know, basically. I'm not sure if these are going to be the kids I'm going to make my personal slaves, but, we'll figure that out as we go along. And then he's approached by Jimmy Jr., who gets the coach to basically run the offense through him by promising him that Trey will give him a job in the Celtics.
A coaching job with the Celtics. And this is the character of Coach Bernie Johnson, played by Paul McKinney. And Coach says to Trey, oh, it's so great to meet you, and I can't wait to quit my job at Foot Locker.
Right.
Now, again, Trey doesn't object. This really is where he should have been like, listen, dude, don't quit your job.
Right. Yeah.
But he doesn't say a word.
Yeah.
He just is speechless.
Yeah, that would have... The next plot should be about this coach who's, penniless and doesn't have a job anymore. And, Trey's at fault for that.
Yeah. And in our little interview moment, Trey admits he was wrong, and he needs to fix things. But, of course, he has a plan.
Yep. He doesn't want to admit that Jim is wrong to Jim.
Right.
But he's instead going to do the rational thing and start throwing trash out the window.
Yeah, so his plan is he wants to get a ticket.
Right. So they're all in the car. They're eating food on the way back.
They're driving home from the game.
And Trey starts throwing things out the window, trash. And, the kids are all excited. Jim doesn't have an opinion on this, which I found kind of interesting.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm not done eating yet. Leave my food alone.
Right. Julia, meanwhile, is getting pissed. And he's like you just said, he's hoping to get a ticket, but instead he just pisses off his soon-to-be wife.
Yeah.
Julius has him stop the car and says she needs a minute, and then takes off. Now Trey's gonna go after her, but Trey's like, no.
Jim.
Okay, well, I don't know what I said. So yeah, Jim says to Trey, "Hey, look, give her that actual moment."
Yeah, give her. He says, give her 2 minutes, and then follow her and tell her you are so sorry.
And follow this advice to the letter, otherwise it might not work.
He's like, hey, I know this. I've been in your shoes.
Right, and I like the fact that Jim is like coaching Trey how to deal with his current significant other.
Yeah, and it's funny because I know I've said it before that the character Jim does remind me so much of Alan Harper.
Yeah.
And even so much as this relationship with Trey.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Alan's relationship with his ex-wife's new husband.
Oh, really? I didn't actually watch the series enough to remember that, but yeah that's interesting. So, so she ends up going, Trey ends up following after the fact, and Trey reveals to Julia that he planned to get pulled over by the cops so he could happily accept the ticket, and reveals why. That Jim was in fact right. Basically, Grace was doing whatever she was doing with her friends, and Jimmy Jr. was trying to basically, hire the coaching staff for the Celtics. And yeah, so he realizes that Jim is actually right. He's no good at the parenting thing, and Julia says, none of them are. Ain't that right?
Yeah, she basically says parenting is being wrong.
Yes.
And we're all going to be wrong.
And you know what? That's a really good point. Like, some weeks you're right, some weeks you're wrong. There's no instruction manual when it comes to parenting.
Yeah, and really, like, there's 3 of them. They need to work together and just figure things out.
Yeah. So, yeah, 1 week Jim is going to be right, 1 week Julie's going to be right, and 1 week they're all going to be wrong. And, no, they don't have to tell Jim that he was in fact right this time.
Yeah.
They go back to the car, but there's already a cop there to give him a ticket, not for littering, but for parking in a no-standing zone.
Yeah, they're in a no-standing zone, so it's a different officer. This is Officer Franks, and he is played by Rico E. Anderson.
And did you look into him?
No.
Okay.
I got names, but I don't have credentials.
Gotcha. So he also recognizes Trey, but this time he's going to give him a ticket anyway because a certain player that's retired, their number was not retired.
Yeah.
And the cop is
so he has
that.
a problem with the way the Celtics have been managed.
So you see, kids, just being famous doesn't mean you get away with everything. All right, an important lesson.
Important lesson.
And then we have our credit sequence, which is them all singing in the car to "They Fought the Law and the Law Won," which is kind of cute.
So the ticket was for $750.
Yes.
That sounds like a really expensive ticket for parking in a no-standing zone.
I don't think that would be how much you would end up paying. Like, my $80 speeding ticket was $239 at one point. Well, he said it was $79, so he did me a favor there, because 80 miles per hour is actually reckless endangerment in the state of Connecticut. But still, that was only $239. I don't think this penalty is as severe.
The penalty for parking. Well, they weren't even parked; they were standing in a no-standing zone. It was. But Jim was like, "Okay, I'm going to take the ticket because I owe you one because I was the one who was supposed to get a ticket originally." And he sees it was $750. He's like, "Never mind."
Yeah, and I feel like
you can pay for that, Mr. $3,000 pajamas.
Right. That's we've had that comedy beat before with Jim, like offering to pay for something and then realizing, nope, that's too expensive for me.
Yeah.
It was the last time I recall that happening was in The Consequences of Sushi.
Right, where he was going to just pay for the tip and then realized it was too much.
Right.
But Grace got the right lesson out of this.
Well,
and the lesson she got was everything revolves around sports because men can't communicate.
That is fair.
And that's really what happened in this episode.
Yeah, pretty much.
Is every way that both of those officers reacted was because of their opinions on sports.
Yep.
Which is sad.
It is sad, but that is the world that we are living in. All right, so do we have anything?
I enjoyed the car karaoke.
Yes.
I thought that was cute.
And, the song was appropriate for the episode.
Yeah, it was. I fought the law, and the law won, which they were happy about. They were happy the law won, because everybody now understands that we got to take it back a level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So next week, the episode is called The Consequences of Sleepovers.
Ah, yes.
We do have it ready for us to preview. I have not watched it yet.
Neither have I.
Excited to do so.
I could have.
It looks like it's going to be a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the exact quote of the description in front of me, but basically, Trey is going to be responsible for the nest. He's taken a night.
Yep.
I guess Julia and Jim both have plans. And Grace is going to have a sleepover.
Yes.
And I wonder if it's Sophie, and which Sophie it is.
Right. If it's Sophie K,
is it the bad Sophie?
Yeah, we're all in trouble with Sophie
Yeah,
K.
yeah.
I think it's Sophie K is the bad one, right?
I forget.
Yeah, so we're not going to do the whole, is it Sophie K, Sophie S thing.
Probably both Sophies will be there. Or maybe it'll be these girls that we met this episode. You know, they've already got credits. Mauve and Siobhan. Maybe she's going to give them a chance.
And maybe this is the episode that we're going to realize that Grace has a problem with pot now.
I know, right? Are we going to get back to that?
Yes.
This seems like a good place for that to come up.
So we'll add some continuity.
Because the parents haven't realized that yet.
Yeah.
But it looks like it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah.
And apparently Jim's going to get roped into dealing with the situation.
Yep.
So I look forward to seeing more of Jim and Trey's relationship in that episode.
That is definitely, like I said, one of the highlights of the series is that relationship. The cast chemistry in general is really good, as we pointed out. But that particular relationship...
And I kind of hope Grandpa Bobby comes and gets involved in it, too, and we get the three men dealing with it. Like we did in the painting thing when there was the three men kind of working together to save the wrath of Julia.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a good dynamic.
All right. Sounds good. Do we have anything else to say about this episode?
I don't.
All right. So, Stacie, we would like to hear from you. Did you like this podcast? Did you like this episode? Stacie, we reached out.
I can reach on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are more ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as ourselves. And, of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.